53 United States senators voted on Wednesday, March 4th, to let this war continue without ever voting to start it. That is the constitutional reality of what happened in the Senate chamber today on day 5 of Operation Epic Fury. 6 American soldiers are already buried. The defense secretary just told the country the war could last 8 weeks. Iran is still firing missiles at American bases. 3 American F-15 fighter jets were shot down by an ally. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh has been struck by Iranian drones. And the United States Senate, the chamber that the Constitution of the United States explicitly charges with the power to declare war, voted 47-53 to let the president keep fighting it alone, without their approval, without their authorization, without their fingerprints on any of it. Today was the day Congress had a chance to assert the most fundamental power the founders gave it, and 53 senators said no. The resolution was introduced by Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, a Democrat and member of both the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It was co-sponsored by Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. The text of the resolution called for the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities within or against the Islamic Republic of Iran that have not been authorized by Congress, either by a formal declaration of war or a specific authorization for use of military force. That is what it said. Remove the forces unless Congress explicitly authorizes the war. The resolution failed in a procedural vote of 47-53, falling short of the simple majority it needed to proceed to the Senate floor for a full debate and final vote. The partisan breakdown was almost perfectly clean. Every Democrat voted yes, except one. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman voted no, joining every Republican in blocking the resolution. Every Republican voted no, except one. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky voted yes, joining every Democrat in supporting it. Paul has been consistent on this position for his entire Senate career. He voted to halt Trump's unauthorized military actions before. He voted yes again. Fetterman has been drifting from the Democratic caucus on national security for months. He voted no. The final count, 47 in favor, 53 against. The war continues without congressional authorization. Now let's talk about the senators whose votes were watched most closely because they tell the story of what just happened inside the Republican Party. Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, the 2 most reliably moderate Republicans in the chamber, both of whom have crossed party lines on significant votes for years, both of whom serve constituencies with significant numbers of independent and Democratic voters, both voted to block the resolution. Collins, who faces a potentially competitive re-election in Maine, said before the vote, passing this resolution now would send the wrong message to Iran and to our troops. At this juncture, providing unequivocal support to our service members is critically important, as is ongoing consultation by the administration with Congress. After the vote, Collins released a statement arguing that advancing a war powers resolution would undercut the troops. The Hill noted Collins also said the administration had done a better job explaining the Iran mission to Congress than it had done before its operation against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. That is not a ringing endorsement, it is a comparative, but it was enough for her to vote no. Republican Senator James Risch of Idaho, who chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, spoke on the floor before the vote and argued that the Constitution gives the president not just the right, but the duty to act as he did. Risch pointed to Iran's efforts to restart its nuclear program after the June 2025 strikes and said, the commander-in-chief ordered this attack because of the increase in the manufacturing of long and medium-range missiles, and after Iran tried to restart the nuclear program that was decimated in the 12-day war. Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma said, war is ugly. It always has been ugly, but we're taking out a regime that has been trying to attack us for quite some time. Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, the second-ranking Republican leader in the Senate, was blunter. Democrats would rather obstruct Donald Trump than obliterate Iran's national nuclear program. That, apparently, is what passes for a closing argument in the United States Senate on the 5th day of an undeclared war. Democrats are obstructing, not constituting. Kaine, on the floor, said, nobody gets to hide and give the president an easy pass or an end run around the Constitution. Everybody's got to declare whether they're for this war or against it. And Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, standing at his podium with a poster of Donald Trump beside him, quoted the president back to the chamber before the vote began. The quote was from Truth Social, posted March the 2nd, 2026. It read, there will likely be more deaths before it ends. That's the way it is. Schumer told the chamber, today, every senator every single one, will pick a side. Do you stand with the American people who are exhausted with forever wars in the Middle East, or stand with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth as they bumble us headfirst into another war? 53 senators stood with Trump and Hegseth. Let's talk about what the War Powers Resolution actually is and why it matters. Because this is the second time in less than a year that this specific vote has been forced on the Senate in connection with Iran. The 1973 War Powers Act was passed during the Vietnam War. Congress's attempt after that catastrophe to claw back some of its constitutional authority over the decision to send Americans to fight and die. The law does three things. It requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying forces into hostilities. It limits any such deployment to 60 days unless Congress authorizes or extends it. And it gives Congress the power at any time to pass a concurrent resolution, not requiring a presidential signature, directing the president to remove the forces. That is what Kaine's resolution attempted to do, and that is what 53 senators voted to block. Trump submitted his war powers notification to Congress on March 2nd in a letter to Senate President pro tempore Chuck Grassley obtained by CBS News. The clock is now running. Under the 1973 Act, Trump has 60 days from the start of hostilities to either end the operation or seek congressional authorization. The strikes began February 28th. The 60-day clock expires April 29th. As of today, 53 senators have indicated they do not intend to stop the war before that clock runs out. Now to the Pentagon briefing, because Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said several things on Wednesday that deserve the Senate's full attention, and which they voted to not give themselves the power to respond to. When asked how long the war will last, Hegseth said, "You can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo. The enemy is off balance, and we're going to keep them off balance." 8 weeks. That is twice the length of the timetable the president had previously said. It is also, notably, beyond the 60-day statutory limit in the War Powers Act. On whether the United States can stop every Iranian missile. This does not mean we can stop everything, but we ensured that the maximum possible defense and maximum possible force protection was set up before we went on offense. General Dan Kaine, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, added, U.S. service members remain in harm's way, and we must be clear-eyed that the risk is still high. On munitions, the question that has been quietly asked inside the Pentagon and among allied governments since day one, Hegseth said supplies of weaponry are not an issue. The military began the campaign with advanced precision-guided munitions, he said, and is now transitioning to gravity bombs as U.S. air dominance over Iranian airspace becomes more established. He added that more aircraft, including jet fighters and bombers, continue to arrive in the region. And he said something else on Wednesday that PBS, CBS, and ABC all confirmed. The goals of this war have shifted. What began as an operation to stop Iran's nuclear program has evolved, publicly in real time, into a campaign targeting Iran's Navy, its missile capabilities, and its Air Force. And the possibility of ground troops has not been ruled out by the president himself. PBS confirmed that Trump has declined to definitively exclude deploying U.S. ground forces. On the other side of the Capitol, House Speaker Mike Johnson said Wednesday that he is confident Republicans will defeat a similar war powers resolution when the House votes Thursday. Johnson said, I think passage of a war powers resolution right now would be a terrible, dangerous idea. It would empower our enemies. It would kneecap our own forces. Republicans hold a thin House majority, so just a handful of Republican defections could change the outcome. Several House conservatives have privately expressed reservations. The vote on Thursday will be watched closely. Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst, herself a former Army officer, delivered what may have been the most humanly honest speech on the Senate floor Wednesday. She acknowledged the human cost explicitly. She said one of the 6 soldiers killed in the Kuwait drone strike was from Iowa. She noted that a National Guard unit from her state had also been attacked in Syria in December, resulting in the deaths of 2 additional soldiers. And then she voted to let the war continue without congressional authorization, saying, but now is our opportunity to bring an end to the decades of chaos. That is the choice every senator made today, on the record, in public, with their name attached to the vote. 47 said the Constitution requires Congress to authorize this war. 53 said it does not. The war started without them. It will continue for now without them. Hegseth says it could last 8 weeks. Trump has not ruled out ground troops. And the president posted on Truth Social, the document Schumer held up before the vote, there will likely be more deaths before it ends. That's the way it is. Today, 53 senators agreed that is the way it is. Stay with us.